Okay, we have a quorum now, so we'll get underway. Thank you for your patience on this. I'm going to close the work session, since we need to have a quorum to do that, the work session that we just had before this.
We need a motion.
Can I hear a motion, please?
I move that we close the work session.
Is
I
there a
second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, the work session is now closed. And now we're going to open up the city council meeting. I believe we have the invocation to start.
Oh,
Roll call.
you may do the roll call first or the invocation?
Oh,
Roll call.
yes, roll call,
Okay.
please.
All right, we have Mayor Pro Tem Chase Williams,
Here?
Councilmember Bates Madison, District 3,
Here?
and Councilmember Joe Gebbia, District 4,
Here.
and Mayor Davis is traveling out of town, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Our invocation? Mr. Daniel Hall.
Everyone, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here together tonight on this warm summer night. Thank you for the elected officials of the city of Brookhaven and the engaged citizens that I know truly care about this city. Please grant the Mayor Pro Tem and Council guidance in their decision-making tonight and let everyone have a safe ride home. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The only remarks I wanted to make was to remind you all of the Food Truck Wednesdays tomorrow night. And then next Tuesday, we will have a couple of important things going on to put on your calendar. We're going to be having a work session at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on our proposed draft of a tree ordinance.
1 o'clock.
1
ma'am.
o'clock. Thank you. 1 o'clock. Our staff has been working since February on reviewing our tree ordinance, and we've been looking at model legislation around the country and our neighbors and really trying to come up with the best practices and improve our tree ordinance that we have now. So we'll hear a little bit more about that later, but that's going to be a good, is it 3 or 4 hour?
3 hours.
3-hour work session, because there's a lot to talk about to really go through what we have now and line by line to, what we're proposing. So again, I appreciate all the work that the staff has put in on this, and we look forward to taking up this very important issue that we all care about. The other thing that night is at 7 o'clock, we'll be having a public open house to see the new Parks Master Plan proposal. So come by and take a look at that and comment on it and see what kind of ideas we have planned for our parks. The only other thing I was going to say is I hope you all had a great 4th of July. Bates and I got to ride in the Dunwoody 4th of July parade and had the coolest car in the show. A friend of Bates had a World War II Jeep, and so we had a really authentic military van, and we were happy to greet all of our neighbors and bring them greetings from Brookhaven, and so that was a lot of fun. The governor was the Grand Marshal, and oh goodness, there were all kinds of good things in the parade, but it was a great holiday to celebrate America. Anybody else?
Just if there are any other of the comprehensive plan or traffic transportation plan coming up, do we have anything coming up in the next 2 weeks? Just to remind the citizens.
We have on Monday, the 14th, we have the Beaufort Highway Improvement Plan and Economic Development Strategy here in City Hall in the chamber from 10:30 to 12:30. And of course, we've already mentioned the Parks and Rec open house. Open house on the 21st from 6 to 8 for the comprehensive plan and the transportation plan.
Right?
I was just double checking, yeah. So lots going on in the coming months, even though it's Summertime. So let's get moving here. Do we have any agenda announcements?
Yes, I'd ask the council, if you would, to please consider amending the agenda under new business and add a new item 3, and that would be to authorize the city manager to negotiate ad valorem taxes with the county.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we amend the agenda to add item 3 to allow the city manager the authority to negotiate the charge by DeKalb County for the payment of ad valorem taxes on the parks.
I
I
hear a
second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. The agenda is amended. We now have public comment period, and sometimes we restrict this to just comments on the agenda, but I'm told there's a pretty wide range of opinions, of comments this morning, or this afternoon, and I think we'll just go ahead and hear from the people.
Okay, we have Sandra Murray, it's the first one.
Do we want to read the policy?
Yeah,
Hold
please.
on just a second, and our clerk is going to read just a basic instruction that we give out every council meeting about public comment.
Okay, the purpose of public comments is to allow residents of Brookhaven or other members of the public to voice their city-related concerns, requests, and opinions. The public comments portion of meetings is reserved exclusively for comments from the public and not for immediate reply. Audience members shall respect the rights of the speakers to be heard and be aware that Brookhaven's decorum rules for public meetings are still in effect during public comments. In order to respect the rights of all citizens, the following rules will control the public comments portion of Brookhaven's meetings. First, prior to speaking, each speaker will complete a speaker card and present it to the clerk before the beginning of the public comment portion of the meeting. The public comments portion of the meeting will last 30 minutes, and speaker cards will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to speak and will identify themselves by name, address, and if applicable, their organization before beginning their presentation. 3, in order to respect the time of each speaker and the rights of all citizens who wish to speak, neither the mayor nor any council member nor any City of Brookhaven staff shall cut a speaker's time by engaging in dialogue, answering questions, or responding to individual issues, concerns, or questions raised by the speaker. 4, only after all speakers have been heard and the public comments portion of the meeting has been closed will the mayor and council be able to address any concerns raised by speakers. 5, any member of the public who does not get an opportunity to speak will be allowed to speak first at a subsequent meeting, and the clerk will hold their speaker card until the date they choose to return. Thank you. And the first one that signed up was Sandra Murray.
Come on down.
It's good to see you again. I'm Sandy Murray. I live at 3212 Saybrook Drive. And I am here today to again request a moratorium on tree cutting in Brookhaven until the city's tree ordinance can be revised. Sometimes it's easy to take our trees for granted. However, I reviewed the results of the 2034 comprehensive plan recently and discovered that protecting our Brookhaven tree canopy is number 2 on the list of what makes and will make Brookhaven a desirable place to live. Let's not take our trees for granted. If we don't make trees a high priority, then there will be no canopy to protect. Here's one reason that the canopy is important to Brookhaven and all of Metro Atlanta area. Heat-related deaths are likely to soar over the next 40 years, according to new research from Georgia Tech, as cited in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yesterday, July 7th, 2014. The article is titled, Georgia Tech Study Looks at Heat Risk, on page B1 of the Metro section. The article goes on to say that major cities across the nation could reduce this risk by half and be virtually eliminated in Atlanta if the cities would embrace a greener footprint. So in Atlanta, if we just keep our trees and plant more trees, we would be much better in protecting ourselves from the heat risk, because heat kills lots of people every year already. We in Brookhaven should do our part. Give us a moratorium on tree cutting until the new tree ordinance is approved. Another reason that trees are important to us is that the carbon dioxide levels are rising worldwide. Trees are the most important source of oxygen for us humans to breathe. Trees take in CO2, carbon dioxide, and expel oxygen. As we cut more trees, we contribute to the rising CO2 levels. We should be planting more trees, not cutting them down. Give us a moratorium on tree cutting until the new tree ordinance is approved. There are many problems with our current tree ordinance, including how we deal with specimen trees, allowing clear cutting of lots, and not requiring any tree replacement. Many trees are being cut every day in Brookhaven. Please place a moratorium on tree cutting in Brookhaven until the new tree ordinance is approved. Thank you.
Next.
Okay, we have Lizzie Stallman.
Can you see me behind here? Thank you for letting me speak. I'm going to follow up to what Sandy said, and I have some examples here. A gentleman named Robert Sorrentino, who is an engineer, met with some of your staff, and I'm not sure who he met with because the report didn't say specifically, but this was regarding a property on Reading Way. The property looked like this originally, okay? The property now was clear-cut. 42 trees were cut and 3 trees were left to build this development. And when the meeting, his report of the meeting was that, oops, we goofed. We gave them permission to do this, and we shouldn't have. My understanding is there was an existing or is an existing tree ordinance that was adopted from DeKalb County. Turning the other cheek and letting these other developers do what they want to do is not going to make a better Brookhaven. I have other examples here, but I was here at the planning meeting, and Miss Sitting Mayor Williams, I don't know what to call you here, cutting down specimen trees and planting younger trees is not going to keep the oxygen production level up. It's just not. It's not scientifically possible. Clearing the canopy is going to destroy us. There are children out there with asthma. Every year it gets worse for them. We have to hold the developers accountable for this. The Hennings, who are over here, brought these photos of a property at 1475 North Druid Hills that is about to be clear cut. I'll leave this for you. And this morning, okay, this morning, my neighbor Kent took me over to a property over on Kusawati. It looks like there's 3 different properties. This is what's behind it and what it looked like before the clear cutting. And this was done in the last week. And according to his information that he gave me, there was actually a Brookhaven truck out there, and they looked kind of disgusted when he passed by. This is what it looks like now. And I'm going to close by saying I've been a homeowner in Brookhaven for going on 31 years now. People come to my home and they say, "We love your neighborhood. You have trees." I want to keep the trees in my neighborhood. And it's despicable what these developers have been allowed to get away with. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Should
have
I leave them here? Okay.
Terrell Karstens.
Daryl Karstens, 2444 Oostanala Drive. I want to request that please let our city manager negotiate the $8,000 for the parks and just bring this to an end. If she doesn't negotiate a penny, we'll still be so happy. Please approve for her to do that. And one last thing on the front yard setback, the comment or the suggestion that the mayor had. I think that's interesting, the notice of the line and stuff, but in your thought process too, remember, what if on either side it's a tenant or if it's a house that's vacant? Then there won't be anybody to have notice or to be able to really have a say in it, especially if it's a tenant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
Okay, we have Sue Binkert.
Hi, I'm Sue Binkert. Is that better? Okay, great. And I live at 2480 LJ, and that is in District 3. And I want to say, as executive liaison for the park group, which is a representation of the different friends groups of the park, that we are ecstatic beyond to be able to get to this point, and please allow Marie Garrett to negotiate again, as Terrell said, what's possible, and if not, so be it. We have to be able to move on. Since the Governor's Commission and all of this, we have been working a couple of years at being able to really get a handle on this, and it's past time. So if we are getting this close, we, as speaking for the whole group, we would sincerely appreciate an endorsement of moving forward for the parks. Thank you.
Ronald Henney.
Hi, I'm Ronald and my wife Norma at 2238 Matthew Street. We are owners of the north side property adjacent to the 1475 North Druid Hills development. I'm sure you know us by now. We are still frustrated and disappointed. It seems to us the intent of the City Council prior to approval of changes of zoning for development was to have the builder meet with the residents affected by the development to work out agreements with the residents. There would be fairness to all residents. In regard to 1475 North Druid Hills development, that's not happening. I spoke to the council on May or June and came away from the meeting with the understanding it was not too late to make this happen, since there was no application for the LDP, land disturbance permit, or building permit from the builder. However, the staff, mainly Ben Song, who I spoke to, does not agree. In my conversation with Ben Song, these positions were stated. According to Ben Song, city conditions 20 and 21 will not be changed. It would take legal and legislative action to change them. Not going to happen. Recalling 20 and 21 dealt with the removal of 2 units from the south side and no balconies. Not so for the north. According to Ben Song, 2 verbal agreements with the council to us did not include townhouse unit placement. Therefore, we now have 8 townhouses instead of the original 6 facing us. And again, where's the fairness? 3, according to Ben Song, these changes are minor changes, not major. Therefore, it does not go back to the council, such as the rooftop terrace becoming porches facing us. We still do not know what they look like. There's no plans available to us. I tried. These are major changes to us. Also, we will have our water and drainage pipes torn up in order for the development to attach to our sewer line on Matthew Street, thus making a path to Matthew Street, which the Matthew Street owners vigorously opposed and thought they had. Not so. According to Ben Song, these are staff-level opinions and do not need city council approval. According to Ben Song, 5, the staff cannot force the developer to meet with adjacent owners, and therefore they will approve or disapprove permits without owners' input. 6, according to Ben Song, the original builder, David Smith, is in the process or has already sold the 1475 North Druid Hills development to Ashton Woods. David Smith's attorney, Doug Dillard, will not be attorney for the new owners. Therefore, our contract agreement with the builders probably will not be valid regardless of what Doug Dillard said to the staff. We will need a new contract with new owners, such as our 8-foot brick wall and 8-foot cast aluminum fence, 8 trees. We are trying to protect the value of our property. The road and townhouses are only 15 feet away. You, the city council, are the elected officials representing the residents and not the staff. We're asking the city council to direct the staff to hold up granting the LDP and building permits until agreements regarding past contract, verbal agreements with the council, and major changes, not minor as the staff says, can be addressed with the adjacent property owners and resolved prior to granting the permit. I understand the staff will not do this unless specifically directed by council to do so. This is what we meant when we said there was a need for a policy to protect adjacent property owners. Thank you for your time.
We have John M. Margolis.
Forgive me for reading a lot, but I have a lot to say. I was optimistic following the May 13, 2014 City Council meeting that things would improve regarding the townhome project at 1475 North Druid Hills. The mayor had agreed with my comment that the changes the developer had made to the project since its final approval on September 14, 2013 had the appearance of a bait and switch, since the rooftop terraces and small balconies that the developer had touted had been removed in the new plan that is submitted 5 months later. Also, Councilman Madison lamented the poor treatment of Ron and Norma Henney, who had based their agreement, as Ron just talked about, based their agreement with the developer on the earlier design of the project. Finally, most importantly, and I'm sorry he's not here tonight, the mayor had directed the city manager and staff to have the developer meet with the neighbors of the project to try and resolve this matter, and if necessary, to require it to come back before the city council to explain the changes and for the public to be able to provide comments on it. However, none of this has taken place in the past 2 months. I understand that Mr. Henney has been unable to speak to the city manager and that he eventually was referred to the same staff, Ben Song, whom the mayor and city council, along with Ms. Cannon, had criticized at the May 13, 2014 meeting for not requiring the developer to adhere to the verbal commitments it had made at the meeting last year regarding there being smaller size balconies and it sharing the reduction of the number of townhomes with this border on Matthew Street. The staff apparently has now told Mr. Henney that the approval of this project will stand without any new meetings being required to be held with the neighbors or before the city council, even with a new developer now taking over the project. I was a federal employee with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for over 28 years, ending as a senior manager. Although there were times that I did not agree with all the directives of the political officials and their appointees, I never did not implement them as is happening in this case with staff. To be fair, problems with the staff regarding this project began before the city manager was appointed, when the staff allowed provisions that benefited Ville de Vista on the Lenox Park side, that benefited them to be entered on the official plan approved on September 24th, 2013. These included reducing the number of units next to Ville de Vista by 2 and putting existing living areas instead of balconies in the 4 remaining units. It should be noted that the units facing Matthew Streets were increased from 6 to 8 in the plan the developer submitted on February 27, 2014. Not reduced from 6 to 5, increased from 6 to 8, contrary to what you all had requested of Mr. Dillard. I understand the future. Verbal commitments will now be in writing, but nonetheless, they were made, and you were aghast about it when I spoke last time. Staff had previously stated that any side agreements with the developer could not be included in the official plan for the project. The Henny's agreement is not part of it, and we are now concerned that the new developer may be able to ignore it, unlike the requirements regarding Ville de Vista, which remain part of the official approved plan that the staff, Mr. Song, said will remain in effect. I implore the mayor and city council to now require the city manager and staff to implement the directives that you made to them at the May 13, 24 meeting. This matter is important not just to those of us who live on Matthew Street, but for all of Brookhaven residents who should be able to believe that when we work with a developer, like the Henneys, to make improvements to a project, and we provide comments to the zoning board and city council, as we did in September and in May, that after the approval, which you all did in September, the developer can make major changes to it and even have a new developer without being held accountable to the staff, the mayor, the city council, or the public. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please give this to the mayor. a lot of public support for us
Right.
at the other hearing, and he may be dismayed to know how what he directed has not been done at all.
Thank you very much.
By the city manager and her staff.
Thank you.
We have Judy Shipman to speak.
My name's Judy Shipman. I live at 1601 Bubbling Creek Road. My husband calls it the Bubbling Creek Autobahn because of all the traffic that we have. It comes, we're cut through street all of a sudden. Not all of a sudden, but it's getting worse all the time. But first, I do want to thank you for all the good things that you've done for the county. I'm here with a concern, but I also want to, it's an opportunity for me to tell you thank you. Parks, the sidewalks, just you're listening to so many people, and when a neighborhood is being encroached by, say, a business, you listen to everything and you have them work together, and I really appreciate that because we didn't really have that with DeKalb County, and you've got a very rough job, but I do appreciate you, and a lot of people do. You just don't hear the appreciations, but anyway, I've been on Bubbling Creek 45 years. We've lived there. It was new when we bought it. We've done a lot of improvements and still doing that, but actually, I call Bubbling Creek alternate Ashford Dunwoody because they come off of Ashford Dunwoody, up Harts Mill, Bubbling Creek, Donaldson, and then back on Johnson Ferry or Ashford Dunwoody. Or they come the other way, morning and evening, rush hour, rush hour. You can't get out of your driveway. I have to wait to get out of the driveway. They speed, the speed bumps. Now, 11 years ago, we did, the neighbors all, I was part of it, we did go to everybody's house, and we got enough percentage to put speed controls in. We have the speed bumps. All the neighbors, I think it's 116 or so neighbors on Bubbling Creek, Runnymede, and Shadow Lane, pay $25 a year to maintain those, and that's been going on for 11 years. So they've only had to do something with them maybe once, but the speed bumps are not working. They don't slow anybody down. They're not the kind that slow anybody down, and they said they couldn't do that because of fire trucks. So anyway. Traffic's so heavy from Ashford Dunwoody at rush hour, and it's not just cars. I mean, we've seen big transport trucks with cars on them, 5 and 6 cars coming from the Peachtree Industrial car lots, coming down Bubbling Creek. Not just me. I've talked to 3 or 4 neighbors different times. They're cutting through, and Comcast, big trucks just coming 2 or 3 at a time, cutting through, big. It's just everything you can mention. At FedEx is back and forth like, they go fast. We can hear them. I'm not even in the front of the house, but you can hear them. You could go to the front of the house. There's another FedEx. There's another UPS. What I'm asking for, begging for, actually, for you to consider, is to put some no-through signs at either end of Bubbling Creek. Just, I know you can't enforce it, but at least it would make it legal that they're not supposed to be there, and maybe we could get some license plates and things and do something about that. The other thing, which I think would even be better, and if it go along together, am I out? Okay, well, last thing. 3-way stop signs, Bubbling Creek and Runnymede, Bubbling Creek and Shadow Lane and Runnymede. They already have stop signs coming off of Runnymede onto Bubbling Creek, and off of Shadow Lane on the Bubbling Creek, and off of Shadow Lane on the Runnymede. 2 more signs, at each of those would be 6 stop signs. People coming down Bubbling Creek would have to stop twice from either direction before they get to Donaldson or Harts Mill. I think that would just drive them crazy, because when Valley View did that, I quit cutting through there when they put the stop signs. I cut through with the speed bumps. It didn't really make that much difference. When they started putting the 3-way stop signs at every intersecting road, that was it for me. I went another way. So I would really love you to consider that. Like I said, all this that we've been paying all these years, over $3,000 a year for 11 years, and they've done, stop signs would be wonderful. And the no-through would be great, too. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We have Mary Storm.
Good evening. I would like to say also how I appreciate you, the council members, and the city of Brookhaven. It's a lovely place to live. I have lived, my name is Mary Storm. I have lived on Bubbling Creek Road for 40 years. And as Judy said, we have a serious problem with cut-through traffic. And this is not our first rodeo. We dealt with DeKalb County from like 2000 until 2003 on different options that we may have. And we did petitions in the wintertime for about 6 months and got 68% of the 116 homes that are in the neighborhood that voted for the speed humps. Nobody wants speed humps on their street. I don't believe that. We didn't want them either, but that was the only solution we could come up with right then. And they are no longer effective. The density in the neighborhood has greatly increased, and people have learned that they can cut through and save time. We are parallel to Ashford Dunwoody, so we've actually become the second Ashford Dunwoody on Bubbling Creek, and Runnymede is almost as bad. The increase in the density has, of course, increased the number of automobiles that we have that come through, and the speed has greatly increased. We've almost had 2 misses in the past, since June 21st. There was a family that was almost run over by an SUV on June 21st when they had a block party, and I think it hit another car, according to what I heard. Another neighbor who was walking her grandsons last week had to jump up on the curb to avoid being hit by a car. I was passed on a speed hump once with a dumpster on the left-hand side and a lady with a baby in a stroller that had to get off the curb when she saw that car was speeding at her. So we do have a problem with speeding, the larger vehicles, and we have a heavy pedestrian traffic, which I dearly love in the neighborhood. We have a lot of mothers, parents that have babies in strollers. We have runners, we have walkers. They begin like at 5 o'clock in the morning on until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. A lot of people have dogs, and it's not just on Bubbling Creek, Runnymede, and Shadow Lane that these people are walking their dogs and so forth. The adjacent neighborhoods come too, which is wonderful. But it's becoming more and more dangerous for the pedestrians on this street. We do not have sidewalks, and as Judy said, traffic signs that says no through traffic would be wonderful. And I would like to meet with transportation or somebody, and we are a specimen of the community, and but we'll get more if need be, and see what we can do about this problem. And it is a serious problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Barbara Berriman.
Hi, I join my neighbors in saying that we do enjoy the amenities that you all have helped bring to our community. And we just want to keep our area safe. I'm going to briefly summarize what my friends have just said. Bubbling Creek is a residential street that is being used as a bypass for Ashford Dunwoody Road. The speed bumps are not solving the problem, and I request that on both ends of the street, we have a no-through traffic sign and have the police enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all of our speakers.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as stated in the agenda.
Could I have a second?
I'm here to second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Under announcements.
Excuse me. All right, the first item is the zoning map update. We discussed this in our work session. We shared with you that we did have an open house on June the 30th. The audited zoning map work has now been completed. The map was unveiled to the public. We did not have as much participation as we had hoped, but we still have opportunities for the public to take a look at the map. It is on the city's website. It will be heard by the Planning Commission in their meeting this month, July the 23rd. Yeah, July 23rd, whereby they will consider the map and make a recommendation, and will travel to the council for August the 12th for the council hearing. So the work has been completed on that front. The second item is an update for you on our parks purchase. Our city attorney, Tom Curry, will give you that update.
As we discussed in the work session, the county on June 24th passed a resolution to authorize the conveyance of all of the parks, but for Brookhaven, which we're still discussing the issue concerning the service center that's there. Fernwood, which is question is whether it's a park or a stormwater drain facility. Either way, the city will probably end up with that one. And the final one being Clack's Corner has been approved, but it's subject to a right of first refusal by the original owner. We've received the deeds, we've received the closing statements, we have reviewed them. We are making certain inquiries concerning items on the closing statements, which will be the subject of the next new business item, or excuse me, the new business item 3, so I won't belabor that. And everything seems to be progressing in an expeditious manner. We're going to do what we can to have them go ahead and execute and deliver the deeds.
Okay, thank you.
The third item is the update for the police department and our courts. The renovation work is complete for the police side. There's a few punch-out items on the court side. Our court will be moving from 2 Corporate Square on August the 1st, and from that date forward, all business of the court will be conducted at the police department headquarters.
Okay. Do we have any reports and presentations?
No, I do not.
And no old business, is that
No.
correct? Under new business.
New business, we have a couple of ordinances, beginning with ordinance 2014-07-01, consideration and approval of amendment to Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages, Section 4-106, failure to require and properly check identification, serving, or selling alcohol to minors. We did review this in your work session, and we recommend that you approve the amendment.
We have a time for public comment on this ordinance. Do we have any public comment?
No one's turned in anything. Does anybody?
Would anybody wish to speak on this ordinance?
Tom, if you would just give us a couple of sentence summary of what it is to make sure people know what this
Okay.
is. We reviewed it earlier.
This
but-
is actually an expansion of the ordinance that we currently have as it relates to the service of minors of alcohol, discussing as it relates to really more of the requirements of the servers, the training, putting the onus on the owners to make sure that the servers are properly trained in order to check for identification in the form of identification that's required in order to confirm that. We also made the modifications we made from the last discussion was related to a clarification of when parents may serve alcohol to minors, which has to be in their home, in their presence.
Okay. All right, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 2014-07-01, consideration and approval of amendment to Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages, Section 4-106, failure to require and properly check identification, serving, or selling alcohol to minors.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes.
Next
Item.
item, ordinance 2014-07-02, consideration and approval of amendment to Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages, Section 4-108, happy hour promotions. We did review this in the work session. Tom, you want to just give a brief?
Yes, this is a change to the happy hour promotion ordinance under our alcohol ordinance to limit really the only promotion that a server of alcohol can allow is to offer to sell drinks at half of their regular price. So giving away free alcohol, giving away promotions of different things in order for there to create more business is not there under this ordinance. So it's very simple. You can have happy hour 24 hours a day, but you can't give away the liquor, and you can't charge less than half price for any alcoholic beverage.
We're allowing for public comment on this, if anybody wants to make a public comment about this. Okay, do I hear a motion?
Mrs. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 2014-07-02, consideration and approval of amendment to Chapter 4 Alcoholic Beverages, Section 4-108, happy hour promotions.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. And we have added an item number 3.
Correct. And this is authorization to allow the city manager to negotiate with the county over the ad valorem taxes assigned to the parks.
Okay, just briefly, when we received the closing statements from the county, they prorated ad valorem taxes for the year 2014. For the past 2 years, the county has been assessing itself ad valorem taxes, even though the county is exempt from ad valorem taxation, as is the city of Brookhaven, both as public entities. And for that, we have raised the question with the county as to the reasonableness of them charging the city for 1/2 years of the taxes. And the purpose of this is to allow the city manager to come to a resolution so we can proceed with the transfer of the parks.
And the amount of this tax liability is
It's
what?
$8,000, $8,019.
Okay.
Mrs. Mayor, I move that we allow the city manager the authority to negotiate the charge by DeKalb County for the payment of ad valorem taxes on the parks.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
I'd just like to make a comment that I find this issue from DeKalb County either an example of gross mismanagement by the county not to correct an ad valorem tax that they are charging themselves and that they're exempt from, or a punitive action to penalize municipalities for this. And I find it deplorable that they're not willing to fix this and correct it, but I am willing to go forward with this motion.
I am seconding this begrudgingly and with dismay on DeKalb County for their actions here. We do have at risk something we've worked very hard for too long. Hence, I think approval to city manager to take care of our best interests is appropriate.
And I would just add that, of course, I think we're all in agreement that it's even silly that they're charging it. It would be outrageous if we had to pay it. But let's not keep $8,000 from having us, get these parks that we've been waiting over a year and a half to get, so.
And I'm sure when the day is over, it won't be $8,000. Maria's in there negotiating.
But let's also do this as quickly as possible, too.
Yes.
I echo the sentiments of some of our residents that we've been waiting so long for this, and we're anxious to move forward. We can't let the first permit or repair the first pavilion until we have ownership of the parks. I mean, we're able to cut the grass and pick up the trash, but we have so much more to do, and I think everybody's anxious to move forward. So, did we vote?
Nope.
Oh, so all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. Do we have any other business?
May I make a comment, just as a
Absolutely.
follow-up, please? Because I think it does deserve a follow-up and a clarification, at least to the public, regarding 1475 Druid Hills. There was contact made immediately following the directive from the mayor and council with Doug Dillard, the attorney representing the applicant for the rezoning. In that discussion, I had our assistant city manager with me, and we talked about the concerns that were voiced by the two gentlemen that appeared before you this evening to make their comments of concern. In our conversation with Mr. Dillard, we brought up a couple of things, one of which was the rooftop terrace versus what we were perceiving as now balconies. There was a discussion on the part of Mr. Dillard was that these were not full-fledged balconies, whereby it was very small, no depth at all, that could only have a couple of chairs out there just to sit, no barbecuing or anything, no partying out on the deck of that sort. He did say, and he did comment, that he was fully aware of the promises and commitments that his client made. And he was very concerned that there seemed to be a change to that. And he personally was going to contact his client, even though he did clarify to us that he wasn't sure he was still his client because there was some activity occurring about selling the property. He didn't know who was keeping it, if he was keeping it, developing it, or who he was selling it to the end user, and what standing his client would still have and remain with the property. He did state that he was going to reach out to his client and convey the message that we wanted to sit down and meet. He did, however, acknowledge that there was no proviso or inclusion in the conditions that called out for a mandate that they had to in fact do that, except for, he said, his client promised. And he felt that, that should be honored, and he was going to reach out to his client and ask him to meet with him and us together and would get back with us. I've not heard back from him. So I will reach back out to Mr. Dillard to see first and foremost, is the gentleman still his client, and does he still have the ability to bring him in? If that's not the case, and if they've not had a meeting and had further discussion, then we'll do that on our own to reach out. I do know, I was just informed that a request for land disturbance permit was filed on July 1st. It's not yet been issued. The permit's not been issued. It's still under review. So we still have an opportunity to continue the dialogue. We just need to know who's representing the decision maker. The decision maker apparently seems to have changed. The ability for the attorney and influence of the same perhaps has changed. So we really need to find out who's in charge and who has the wherewithal to honor a commitment that was made by themselves or made in representation of now a new owner. So, please know that we heard the gentleman back in May convey their concern, their disappointment, and we took it as seriously as the council did and didn't need the directive to reach out. We did it anyway. And unfortunately, because property was under contract and purchased and now apparently sold and now permit is coming in, a lot of changes have occurred. And a lot of the ability for the attorney who represented the applicant at the podium seeking the zoning doesn't have as great of influence as he once had. But the promise was made by the then owner, not by the attorney who represented the owner, but the actual decision maker.
Thanks for the clarification, Marie. I would like to see if we can, if I could direct you to contact the property owner, whoever is the applicant for the LDP, so that we can set up a meeting.
Yes.
I'd like to attend that meeting, and I would also think that it would be reasonable to have a representative of the neighborhoods and concerns there at the meeting to address these issues. They both, from my knowledge of both the parties that were mentioned, are good developers, and I think that at the end of the dialogue, hopefully the right thing will be done by the property owner, whoever that is.
Right. Right.
So, thanks, and certainly before we issue any permits.
Do we as council have the authority or the purveyance to request to you and to community development that an LDP be held off until such time as this meeting can come off? Tom, are we within our legal realm?
No, sir. That has to be the decision of the community development director.
What is the normal timing on approval of an LDP?
Usually,
Typically, the review process is 10 days, but in this particular matter, there's just more to review.
So time is of the essence.
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
And I would highly recommend that, unless otherwise suggested by the community, that Ron and Nancy Hennessy and John Margolis be the two that would be chosen to be sitting in on this.
We welcome them to attend.
Right. And I would also like to have the opportunity to attend it.
I have a question. Do we have any opportunity to go back and amend the conditions on the zoning?
Not unless the applicant's coming back seeking something more.
Because
But-
I too am bothered by the fact that agreements were made that were not in fact put in the conditions, but in good faith were made with the developer or with the attorney, and then lo and behold, it gets flipped and neither attorney nor that person is there. And that's just wrong. I think we took to heart that these agreements had been made, and I'm sorry now that we didn't put them in as a condition. I mean, we'll be vigilant about that in the future, but I'm really distressed that this is happening. And I am hopeful that Ashton Woods is a good developer, but they are probably under no legal obligation to
No.
take a gentleman's agreement or an.
Well, it may have been an agreement that was never shared with them, because when there's a chain
Well,
of
that's the
title that
problem,
occurs
isn't it?
like this,
Yes.
that any encumbrances on the property are, what is contingent on the sale, so that there's full disclosure. And if it's not on that list, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And, so that's the peril of the conversations going on back and forth from the podium. And when promises are made, they need to state that they agree that that's part of the condition and that they're held to that, so that staff has something to require them to do so. It's very difficult when you have a developer or the end user, if you will, holding up the conditions saying it's
Not here.
it's not here. All I can do is share with you that, it has been taken seriously. And I will say this for Mr. Dillard, he was very concerned too. He admitted immediately that that was a promise that was made, that's what he understood, that he would do everything he could to reach out and get back to us, and as soon as he knew something. So
That's been over a month, though, hasn't it?
it has, and, we want to, it took us a while to be able to get a meeting with him too. In fact, it was a meeting, and then the meeting was canceled, and it was handled by phone because of his availability.
What
But
do you
he-
think would be a reasonable time frame now, then, to try and set an objective to complete this?
Well, I plan on calling Mr. Dillard tonight.
But
And I think, we can look at something as, the plans are being reviewed for land disturbance. That's not the building permit. So the footprints of the building would be the same, whether there are terraces, balconies on them or not, because those aren't the structural drawings. This is just the civil work. Anything that's below the ground and up to 6 inches on the backside of a curb, that's what an LDP is for. So there is still the opportunity, but we need to move fast and get whoever the real owner is
Right.
at the table with whoever their representatives are.
I think it's pretty apparent the consensus of council is consistent here. So,
Yeah, and I also think that if we can look at the legal issues involved in this case, because certainly this tragedy of this case is that the property owners most cooperative to the developer are the ones that didn't apparently get this is somehow not a part of the public record, the agreement they had so that the developer could get their consent and buy-in. Whereas the other party, which had a very adversarial relationship with the developer and bringing an attorney in, is the only one who's ended up benefiting in that negotiation between the parties on both sides. So, I know we had plenty of dialogue and discussion about this, but from a legal standpoint, I'd like to see if the city can look into this to see if there is some action to hold a new development.
What I would suggest is see if you can get the audience, and if not, then let me write whoever the developer is a letter saying that these promises were met and that city council anticipates and expects them to agree with those promises. Because, when it gets down to the end of the day, the last thing that they want is to have the city on the wrong side of the aisle with them.
Or to be held up.
Ashton Woods does a lot of business in the city of Brookhaven.
They're coming before us in our next go-round with the
Right. I mean,
development.
they do have a very good reputation, and I would,
So I would just let the process work, but if it's, but I think the message is that time is of the essence. And certainly I'll be glad to step in to help encourage.
Well, as long as
encourage this result.
Yeah, I think even, to what extent Doug Diller can help may be nice, but I think the applicant certainly is a primary contact for us here.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I had a question on another issue that was raised about, we've heard this on other streets, about the problem of cut-through traffic and speeding. I'd like to direct the city manager to ask the Public Works Department to at least see if we can put up a no-through sign, a no-through traffic sign, and at least examine whether the stop signs, I know there's lots of requirements and restrictions about stop signs, and you're not really supposed to use them for traffic calming. But this is a very busy street, and I've seen it myself, that the trucks just go barreling down this road, and she's not exaggerating when she says these semi-tractor trailer trucks loaded with cars are using this residential road for a cut-through.
Well, certainly, at a minimum, a weight limit can be installed
and,
on
some
the road.
enforcement along there, too.
I'd like to take this one step further, and I'd like to ask cooperation from your department that we come up with a strategy on how to address these types of situations as we go down the road instead of looking at them individually. And I'm looking for a full Monty on this one here, which would be Public Works with the signage, with the speed humps, and coordination with the police department to enforce what it is, what we're trying to achieve. Whether, especially on the speeding part, when you talk about the danger to the residents, I mean, I'm really alarmed at what I hear. And then I'd like to have a prototype established. When we get these kind of complaints, we don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel each time. We can go in, we know what the game plan is, and we do it, and we don't do it individually, we do it as a unit. Thank you.
Well, we've had the same request for West Nancy Creek as well, coming from the roundabout. And I think Public Works have been working with Sandy Springs on trying to get the no-through traffic sign back up. It still isn't there, but I agree with Joe. I think that's a good idea. This is an increasing problem throughout our city, and it really destroys the residential. People can't sometimes even get in or out of their homes during rush hours.
Yeah, there was a comment to address Ella-J. Kusawati as a cut-through issue. Certainly, all these cut-through streets, Ella-J. to Kusawati is a major thoroughfare, even used by the fire department to get to Beaufort Highway. But it's a racetrack also. So all these things we want to make sure get into the traffic and transportation plan. And I think, when we're looking at traffic calming devices, we look at alternatives, not just speed humps, but road narrowing, with islands as a possible alternative. So you don't have to get the bump, but you still slow down.
Okay, well then I'm sorry, did you have another comment on this?
Not on this, but I was going to ask about another issue.
Well, I was also. I'll yield to the Mayor Pro Tem.
I wanted to ask our city manager, there's been a suggestion to have a tree cutting moratorium. That sounds pretty severe to me. It seems like it would cause a lot of building to just grind to a halt. Can I get your thoughts on that, or our community development director?
Well, I understand the sensitive issues related to that. I think we have, and what you'll find on Tuesday when we meet with this revised tree ordinance, I think you're going to be very pleased with the direction that it's headed in, and being more protective and being more clear about what is expected, especially with tree removal and how much tree removal. To place a moratorium on any tree removals, is that one tree? Is that 10 trees? Is that a tree of 3 inches caliber or more? How is that measured, at chest height or where? Is it a specimen tree? Are we looking at hardwoods or are we looking at, pines? I think we need to have some specificity on what we're saying, because if we're talking about across-the-board tree moratorium, would that include dead trees? Or what about somebody that's trying to prune up or maybe remove a couple of trees in their backyard because their favorite tree is being choked and shaded out and can't grow? So I think, we need to be clear on, are we talking about anything of 1 acre or more? Are we talking about only those properties that are requesting a land disturbance permit? And I think that's really where most of the comments have come, where there's been this clear cutting to ready a site for a new subdivision. I don't think I've heard, at least not tonight nor otherwise, concerns coming from the public about a neighbor, taking down trees. But I would ask you to be very specific on what we're, calling for in a moratorium, because
Well, I think the focus and what's bringing this to our attention is the actions of developers, not the individual.
Well, I just want to be clear on that, because if that is the wish of the council, then we need to understand that, because sometimes neighbors don't get along, and when somebody's cutting down a tree, there's the reason and excuse to call it in.
Well,
And so I'm looking at how we gear up the manpower for this, how we explain the slowdown with the number of land disturbance permit requests that we have in, the zoning cases that have gone through the city, and the progress that developments are making as they're trying to ready a product for later in the summer or early fall. We're happy to do what you want. I just need to understand the parameters for what you're looking at. And then, of course, ultimately, for what time period? Are we talking about perhaps the next 30 days? Are we talking about the next 15 days to give you a sense of what this revised ordinance looks like next Tuesday afternoon, and to get some comment, immediate comment perhaps from the public? We've got to have that level of specificity, because you will receive a lot of pressure from the development community as well as your citizenry. What is the duration?
Yeah.
Who falls into that category of moratorium?
We've been,
Applied for permits.
Well,
Right, been approved.
we're operating under a tree ordinance, which
We are.
we've operated under for, I don't know how long, at the DeKalb County.
inception.
Well, certainly
right,
from
prior to,
inception,
yes.
but prior to that, with the DeKalb County's tree ordinance. The reason that we are seeing this bubble up to the surface is, one, hopefully we are listening and hearing the concerns of the citizens,
Mm-hmm.
but two, we've had a tremendous uptick in development activity.
Yes.
I would be against seeing a stop of all development activity, because we, have an issue with the tree ordinance that we've had for years and years. But I would like to see the city move as quickly as possible to resolve this issue. And I think that there is I'm optimistic about some of the things that you've been mentioning about, larger caliber trees as replacements for specimen trees. And so I'm optimistic about this. But just as a time frame, if we look at this thing on Tuesday, how long would it take to adopt it? Could it be adopted at the next council meeting, 2 weeks from now?
Well, if we hear it on just 1 second, let me ask a question. That's not part of your zoning. Okay, so it's a freestanding ordinance. It's not tied to zoning that would have to go through zoning procedures. Our next council meeting is July the 22nd. Your work session is July the 15th. I think you would want input from your public.
That's only 7
so that
days of
they,
input.
have a sense of understanding and perhaps offer suggestions. Certainly, those that are being required to adhere to the new regulations need to have an understanding of what that is. So I typically, we usually put new ordinances out there for 30 days. I would not want to go less than 2 weeks without some kind of blanket contact to the community through e-blast or Twitter, whatever, our communications department can get out, along with our contacting the development community, the chamber, everybody, to get them aware that, that changes are about to happen. I mean, we can move very quickly, but I would not want complaints coming from the community at large, residents and developers saying they didn't understand what was just done without having an opportunity to digest it. So part of that would be, we have a work session on Tuesday. It's going to be 3 hours long. We're going to take a lot of time going through that ordinance. I hope the public will show up. I hope developers will be here, sitting and listening, even though it is a workshop. They can still hear the dialogue and then the exchange. And, from there, we could look at least, you've got an August 12th hearing, or you could have a special called meeting the week of August the 4th. That would be then 3 weeks. So that's
What-
shy of 1 week of what's normal, typical for you all.
In my mind, I think the urgency, to consider the urgency of doing this would be if things were really helter-skelter, okay? And I did hear something that was very alarming tonight. I heard a story about multiple trees, approval to cut down, and then the after event was, oops, we made a mistake.
Well, I'd
I'm
actually
not
like
sure
to hear.
that's
I'd like to
correct.
hear-
We'll have to
I'm
look
throwing
at
this
that.
back at you, and can you add any?
All I
light
can
note to
add
this?
is, my first thought and reaction was, I need to check on that. I know that we have a staff that's very thorough and reviews ordinances, and this is not to throw the county under the bus, but we're dealing with some archaic and very confusing ordinances. They are not user-friendly, and I'll just say that. They reference other code sections that are deep into another code. They're not all together, and that's one of the things we want to do with the tree ordinance. So without investigating it further and checking with staff on who said the oops, if that was indeed said or meant to mean that a mistake was made, my first reaction is no, I don't believe that.
Sure.
But I think it deserves being checked.
Well, let's just make sure that we find that information out from a
next Tuesday?
quality assurance
Yes,
standpoint,
absolutely.
just to check in the future.
Absolutely.
Let's
And the
make sure we get
assistant
it.
city manager sitting behind me manages that department.
All right.
I can tell you before I finished my thought, she already had it
Yeah.
about checking.
You might want to have a conversation with the individual that made those comments tonight to
I
find
would
out
like to.
personalities that may be involved here, so we can help identify.
Absolutely.
Because we have a problem, we need to address it.
Right.
Obviously, okay, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and getting back to the major question at hand is, if you all are wanting to move with due haste, I would say 3 weeks is a good time period from next Tuesday. That gives us enough time to have out, the document to the public. And on Tuesday, we're going to be expecting a lot of feedback from you all and giving us some directive on what you want tweaked or what you want changed or perhaps what you want eliminated. We really need to know what your direction's going to be, and what we want to do from that meeting is to take that and make those changes or additions and then put that out to the community. And you'll be looking at it at the same time. And again, until it reaches this body for a final determination, you can change things, you can tweak it. So that's why we like to put these documents out for the public to review.
Right, and that's my point. Rather than, I'm more concerned that we get to the point where we can publish our sort of final tree ordinance to the public and allow them time to digest it. Not so much that I want to rush to pass an ordinance, but I want to get to the point where we actually have something that's
Right.
finalized.
Well, if you want to follow the normal course and use the existing published hearing dates, then that would be August the 12th.
Yeah.
If you'd like to accelerate it somewhat, then I would say no earlier than August the 5th.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, if I may, we have a staff meeting tomorrow to look at the final draft of the tree ordinance. We'll be meeting with our arborist and also our tree consultant, and we will do our very best to get that to you all by Friday, prior to your meeting next week for the work session. So you at least have that prior to the work session.
Be excellent.
Okay, good. All right, anything else? Where's my agenda here? Just, we don't need an executive session, right?
There's
move-
not any more public comment. We have another public comment, but I didn't get any cards.
Does anybody have any more comments who wants to speak? Just come on up and just come on up and give us your name. You're still open for business.
My name is Barbara Furbish, and I live on Cove Circle. I'm here to see if there's anyone I could speak with after the meeting to verify what zone district I'm in and who my representative is. I'm kind of confused.
What's the address again?
2681 Cove Circle. Is it 2, District 2? Who's our representative?
Currently unrepresented.
The three of us.
We-
Good, I got
You-
3.
you have-
Any one of us.
You have the mayor
Now,
and council.
be careful how you make this decision. Which one of us do you want?
But is there any plans for who we're going to get?
We have announced that there's a special election as required by law that will be held on the November 3rd.
We have to wait
in
that
the general election. I know the law didn't allow us to do it on this runoff election.
All right.
But it had to be either in a primary or a general election. So
Very good.
unfortunately, it was too late for the primary, so
Right.
it's on the general. But qualifying is August,
19, 20, and 21
there we go.
in the city clerk's office
So,
here at City Hall.
we're looking for some good candidates.
Well, I hope
You
we
should
get
run.
one. Thanks for all you do.
Oh,
Thank
thank you. All righty, so with that,
Another public comment.
okay.
Again, I'd like to thank you for your support on 1475 North Druid Hill development. The only other comment I wanted to make is that this was not a gentleman's agreement. This was a contract
Okay.
that I had
Right.
with the builder. So it's a little different, I think, than a gentleman's agreement.
Well, then we definitely need to put that before the new builder.
If you wouldn't mind sending that to me, I'll make sure we get it in the hands of city staff if our city staff doesn't have it already. But
Okay.
you've got my email address, I think.
Yes.
Just shoot it over to me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for attending. We love to see our citizens here and your engagement, and we appreciate your support and your help, and we appreciate your criticism. It's the only thing that keeps us going straight here. With that,
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn the meeting.
And I second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.